And welcome to episode 6 of Tech and Test. And with me today is Larry Goddard. Hello, Larry.
Hi, Peter, how are you?
I'm very, very well, thank you. So, formally, I'm reading you are the test automation framework architect, right? Or just test automation architect at Oxford University Press. Um, I'm guessing that's your day job, right? That's what you
Yeah,
do.
that's the day job.
Okay, great. Would you like to just introduce yourselves to the Tech and Test audience?
Okay, yeah, sure. Well, as you say, I'm Larry Goddard. I'm the test automation architect for Oxford University Press. I'm also the creator of Klassi-js, which is a test automation framework. It's built on, let's just say, it's JS, so it's built on JavaScript, WebdriverIO under the hood. I am also a published author. I have a book out there called Enhanced Test Automation with WebdriverIO. And besides all that, I am an ethical AI advocate, speaker, mentor, and an open source contributor.
Wow, just a few things,
Yeah,
right?
just a few things.
So I've been reading, and just to highlight your book, actually, it's a great piece of work. I've got a copy here,
Hmm.
and it really goes into how you set up your machine and get test automation on there, all the way down to like CI/CD and Jenkins. So it's a really good, comprehensive book. Yeah, and I like the personal message you wrote in there for me. Actually, quite nice.
Yeah,
Um,
thanks
Adapt
much.
and thrive for change. Is life's true constant. Continuous learning is key. Very, very inspirational. Thank you for the personal message. Really appreciate that.
Pleasure, my pleasure.
So I've been reading a little bit about you, and you have a diverse experience, right? In aviation, I've heard, and telecommunications, and working in the fashion industry, right? So
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like, how did you get into software testing to begin with?
Well, it's funny enough, it was by chance. And I'll say, yeah, by chance. Um, my background is, well, we could go a little pull back, but I'll just stay with the IT part of my background. I
Sure.
started as a systems engineer, Microsoft certified systems engineer. So I used to work for major airline. I could call names. I used to work for British Airways. Yes, I
Okay,
was one of
cool.
the system engineers for them. And it was a year around when they started to outsource a lot. I was one because I was a contractor working for them for a couple of years, so I was not employee. And so we were first to go. And a friend of mine say, with the hiring by us, and I say, what? He say, the testing. And I went, what? Yeah, and he said, yeah, you could come. He said you'll do good based on what you know, and you'll do good. So I said, fine. So I met him the next day, went up to the job, and it was funny. And I think this is something I need to put out there. It was funny. I went. So let's say it's you is his boss. So he introduced me to you, and I'm standing from you, but you behind your desk. So your phone rang. And as you say, give me a minute. You answer the phone, and I'm looking at something on your desk. You know who he is. I'm
Yeah.
really upside down. And I'm waiting. And when you come off the phone, I say, that won't work. And he say, what? I say, that diagram you have there, that won't work. That will fail. And he say, what
Mm.
you mean? And I just pointed out, I say, you see that, if you take an axe and just cut that line there, everything down here is going to fail. And I was hired on the spot, right there,
Wow.
right done. And because what it was, they had a network diagram.
Right.
And it was when, what it was called, SMS messages was now coming in. And this massive company together with Vodafone was building out a whole thing to run it. And what I was looking at was the network diagram for the
Hmm.
architecture. And I just think and I realized, nope, that won't work. That's gonna fail. And yeah, so that was my first job. They hired me to test the infrastructure for SMS messaging, and that was my first job in testing. That's how I get into testing.
Wow. What a story. So just literally from that moment, that's where it all started, the
That's
whole
where it all
beginning.
started.
Wow. Okay, great. So it was never an intentional thing that you kind of decided to go into, right?
Oh no, like I said, I didn't even know testing existed. I was an
Yeah.
engineer, I keep running cables and hubs and routers and network. That was me. So it was kind of a well call it an accidental career. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Really impressive. Yeah. I think it's quite common actually. A lot of people who end up in testing don't intentionally want to work in testing. It's sort of ends up that way for quite a few folk, right? So let's also talk about Klassi-js, right? So this great open source tool that you've created, it's a framework, test automation framework in JS. What sort of triggered you to create this framework? It was
What triggered me to actually do it was back in at the time I was asked to what it was that I had this friend who was working for this company, and they had an issue where anytime they created something and they need to put it out on the web, it used to take them 2.5 weeks to test it
right.
before it go live. Because it was all manual and stuff. So that's all the browsers, all the different permeations. And
Hmm.
he told them that he knows somebody who could do it. And
Okay.
that's how it went. He said, I know somebody who could do this. And they say, okay, let's have a chat with him. So I went and I met them. And the thing was, I decided, okay, the first 3 days I spent on the job, I didn't do anything. I spent 3 days on the job and I didn't do, and I mean absolutely nothing. Because I sat there thinking, how could I do something that could create, allow this to become less time, and not only that, and deal with all the other people and all the other things that they have, because there are people writing C sharp, there are people writing Python, and I just stood there and I say, you know what, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to I'm going to build something using a common source that everybody would know. You know, it's called JavaScript. No matter
Mhm.
what language you in, and no matter what programming language you know, all developers know JavaScript. And that was the catalyst for
I
bringing it.
see.
Yeah, that was the catalyst for bringing it. And then I started to look at the different models that are out there. They have a lot. They have Nightwatch, they have Angular, they have, WebdriverIO was now new on the scene back then. And I
Right.
decided, oh, I like how they look from what, I did some work on, going through them, and I decided to choose them because they were more comprehensive in what you could get out of the box. And so then I decided I'm going to use that, and that was it. It was born from then. It was very crude at the moment, at the thing, but in the end, you went from 2.5 weeks to 8.5 hours
Wow.
and testing everything. So that's where it started, and then over the years, improve on it, and now it's a module. You can literally call it as a module into your instance on your end. So yeah, so that's how it was born. That's and that's the life cycle of it, really. So yeah, like what it does is, as it stands right now, it's do E2E testing, APIs, visual validation, some self-healing, because the whole AI thing come around. So I build up a little AI stuff inside there, and things as well. So it does pretty well, and it is the tool of choice at the press. So it's being used all over the world at the moment for Oxford University Press, where we have offices and people working. And in extension, it's a tool that Cognizant, that big Indian company, they use it because of the relation they have with OUP.
I
So they use
see.
the framework, and of course they realize it good, so they now use it because it's open source. So they now use it for other projects. Yeah.
Understood. Yeah, definitely. So it's great that you've basically kicked off this project. Like it seems to be very popular, and it's also covered in your book. I've noticed that you've put a chapter in there to sort of dive into what it is and how to get started,
Yeah.
which is great. And actually, if I'm to take a step back and talk about WebdriverIO just a little bit, um, what do you think are some of the key benefits of using WebdriverIO versus maybe I know there's a lot of folk making noise around Playwright, right, as a another framework. Without going into like wars on test automation frameworks, um, what do you think are some of the key big benefits of using WebdriverIO? If someone wants to start a project today, why should they use WebdriverIO?
I think the issue of one of the thing is it's agnostic, browser agnostic. That's the first thing. The other thing is it have everything built in, literally.
Hmm.
Appium, because strangely, but Appium is built in there, and they also
Yes.
have, yes, and they also have dev tools inside there, and what's the other one? I can't remember the other one. But everything is literally built in, and it's under the under it. So if you're using WebIO as WebIO itself, directly where you're using their test run and everything, you could do a lot of your testing without having to get another third-party tool to do it.
Right.
Things like Playwright and Cypress, you could do some end-to-end testing and things, but you still have to add something else to do things like APIs. I think Cypress just adds something to do APIs, if my memory serves me right, or Playwright, one of them. And that's the big, a massive difference. You could do all this testing using the framework without having to, like I say, include a set of third-party bits, because WebdriverIO, and not only that, and one of the greatest things for it is that WebdriverIO is part of the JS Foundation.
Wow.
So that in itself, I tell you right away, this have a whole massive ecosystem behind it. Like Playwright is, if I'm not mistaken, Playwright is Microsoft.
Yeah, I think
And Cypress
Microsoft.
is a single guy or two guys there. But when coming to WebdriverIO, they have the whole JS Foundation backing them.
Oh,
So it's like a no-brainer. So without, like you say, without going into the walls of each of them, those are the
sure, sure.
reasons why I would suggest to anybody to use that one, because if you need information, the JS Foundation is like massive. It's like, it's like using selenium, if the foundation is so massive. Yeah, and so that's the reason why I, will go with it now.
Great. Yeah, no, I've used WebdriverIO on one of my projects when I was doing web UI testing, and I think the speed even is one of the things as well. It executes tests really quickly in parallel, so that was quite nice.
Yeah, and they
Um,
add component testing now, and now you can actually test components, inside inside the browser, and then they add on the BD, they add BD functionality into there. So literally you looking at the whole JS ecosystem ported
mhm.
inside of this framework. It's a no-brainer.
Definitely. So you've had a career, right, in test automation, I guess, for like, is it 2 decades? Would that be
Yeah,
fair?
just a while, a long while. Even those say it like that, people know my age.
Um, well, I guess you've seen like the field evolve over that time, right? And I
Yeah.
guess more recently, right, where with the introduction of AI, as you've even mentioned already, right, in tooling, and in some ways, I'm quite sad to see society, because I think we're losing our human connection sometimes with a lot of AI. We're trying to replace a lot of human behavior with artificial intelligence, right? But we forget the technology we have in ourselves, which computers can't properly replicate, right? But having said that, what do you think is sort of the next for test automation? Where do you think AI is going to take us in the next maybe 5 years?
I think it actually, I just finished. Well, I'm still doing it. I'm looking at, GitHub Copilot, and I'll call
Mhm.
because I'm actually using that in a minute. And we're looking at, what it could do and how it could enhance things. And so let's say in the next 5 years, like you rightfully saying, it will never replace the tester. That's to start with. It wouldn't replace the tester, so they don't need to start scary running away. But it will make the job easier, easier and quicker. Yeah, because I run a POC on it where I ask it to do specific things. Like I say, oh, I would like to do this, build me that, and it will actually do it, and it works. It works. You just have to tweak on it, and to make it specific to what it is you want to do. So you can do things like, as it stands right now, it could write good feature files.
Mhm.
Or if you say, here is a list of features I write for this particular product, you know, and what it will do, it will go through it and then realize, oh, you missed these, and it will write some features for things that you didn't even think of. And yeah, it is that, it's crazy. It's crazy, but in 5 years' time, it will just get better like anything else. Like it come like people, when the car was invented,
Mhm.
it just got better over time. But people that still ride horses. Horses didn't die out. They didn't. they're still there, they're still serving the purpose. They just don't go from point A to point B on horses anymore,
Right.
and things like that. And that's how it will evolve. It will make things a lot, especially for people like myself and for you, for us who have been in it for a long time. It makes it a lot easier and faster. My only drawback with it is the new guys that are coming into the world.
Right.
If they come into the world and they don't have let's say a developer's concept mindset and thing, and they start using that, I think it will not be as good as it should be, because one of the things the will do, it will spit out a piece of code for you and you will just use it. And
Yeah.
if something break, you will can't fix it because you
Mhm.
don't have that developer mindset to look at what the code is doing and look at how it works. So that's my only thing about it, where companies giving it to the employees to use. I feel if you have less than 2 years in the business, you shouldn't be using it.
Mhm. That's a
Yeah, I
very
don't
good
matter. Yeah,
advice. Yeah, it's really interesting because I think, it makes you wonder how new graduates are going to learn computer science as well, right?
exactly. You
Um,
see, that's the point. Exactly. That's the point.
um, I remember in one exam I had to write Java code by hand on a piece of paper, right? And I'm not saying that's a good way of learning, but like it's it's going to be too easy to generate code, and knowing what good code is, and if anything, maybe there's the need for more testing, given all this code is being generated.
Yeah, and you're right. You'll have need for more testing because, like I say, you as somebody, like say, graduate, you know that graduate school and stuff like that, and you use the tool, so you're good at engineering. You can ask good questions and give you good stuff. But then, like I say, if it break, you don't actually understand how the code
Yeah,
work. You don't understand the flow. You don't understand what is in scope and what is out of scope for particular things and why it's structured that way. So when it's broken, you're screwed because you can't fix it. So now you have to ask. This is the nice part. You now have to ask the AI to fix
yeah.
it, and then it will start refactoring, and everything it give you, you would use because you don't
Mm,
understand it. And I think that is one of, like I say, it's good, but anybody with under 2 years, let's say, service shouldn't be using it in
yeah.
a productive in productive environment and stuff. Get your hands dirty first. Understand how the code works. Understand how we test things. Understand why we do things, and then you can use that to enhance your knowledge and make life easier for yourself.
I see. Yeah, so that's really good advice. That was going to be one of my questions. What advice would you give to someone starting the industry today, right? And I think you've mentioned it, right? Just actually code, right? Get back into coding, like
Yeah,
from scratch. Yeah, and I think these tools are brought in to help with productivity. So companies want to see productivity increase, and they want to see improvements there, and return of investment improving. But like you said, for someone starting out, it doesn't necessarily help them on that journey with debugging, right?
yeah, exactly. So so my when I come into giving advice and I tell people this, you now come into the industry, you need to learn the basics. Like we say, GitHub 101, coding
Hmm.
101. These are the
Hmm.
things you need to learn. So at least you will understand when you look at the code and it's broken, because like things happens and things break, and then it spit out a lot of gobbledygook in the console log. As a trained person like myself, unlike you, we'll watch it and somewhere in the middle there we'll realize, with just one glance, we realize, oh yeah, that's referring to, and we could just go straight and sort it out. But if you don't have that, if
Yes.
you don't have that level of thing, it will spit out a lot of things. It was broken. And now, this is the nice part, the company that hire you to use AI to do the job now have to hire me to fix your mistake.
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
For
because that's how
someone.
it works. Because you could use it, but you don't have the mental capacity and
Yeah,
things to understand what happens with it when it's broken, and that is something will always be there. Things will break. Things will break. They bring out a new update to the browser because Node went to version 36, and now the browser didn't catch up yet. So your test break, and you're trying to figure out why, and
hmm,
you can't figure it out because you don't have that knowledge. You don't. It is not anywhere in because you're reliant on the whole AI model, to do it. And hence the reason that brings us to where we are now, hence the reason for the book. It teach you, although the book is called Enhanced Test Automation WebdriverIO, if you're like you read it, so if you look at the book in itself, from cover to cover, everything inside there, you could use it and apply it to any language model that you have. Although we say, because we have to write it with some language. So, and that's the thing, you could use it inside and apply that to any language model you're using, and it will just work. Because you need to learn the basic, and that's why we write the book like that. Show it to you from the scratch. This is how you do it. This is how you install it. And down in the back, we say, if you have while you're installing, you have problems, we will tell you why you didn't problem, how to fix it. So we put a whole section down in the back to go and look at those errors you get there and say, oh, all right, yeah, we can do this. Boom, and it works. Because the idea is to get the younger people that are coming into the environment to be able to look at things and be able to debug things easier than it was for me and you.
I see.
Yeah.
Great. And how long did you take to write the book? And that this you obviously are working full time and you have a family, right? So I'm just curious, what sort of methods did you use, or like to kind of cope with the challenges of writing a book and keeping up with work and also enjoying family life? So what
I'm good with time management. Yeah, I'm good with time
right.
management. As the book say, I'm ex-military. I'm very, very good with time management. And so what I did but the challenge was my co-author lives in Chicago.
Wow.
So we're talking a massive time difference. Yeah, so what we do is we set aside 4 hours on a Saturday, 3 hours on a Sunday, and a if catch up between Monday and Friday. And we trash it all out. So he working on a chapter, I working on a chapter, then we meet up and we go through everything and then one of my responsibility was I write all the code. Like
Wow.
that's it. All the code in the book I wrote. Right? So that was my bit. I was the code guy. So I would write all the test cases, all the, and that's so everything so you find what we'll do is you'll match up what's going on. Then I would look at what he have and I would come up with some tests for that. And then I would give him my chapter that I, write on. So I would do all the bits like CI/CD and all that kind of thing. And he doing all the earlier chapters like the installation. So we kind of start the book from the front and the back at the same time.
I see.
Yeah, and working with things. So by the time he got to that point, I already had all the CIC things set up because I do that from a day job. So easy. So I just write it up. And that's how we do it. So it's all about time management. And you set aside that time like everything else. It was just another thing in the arsenal to do. Put some time away for it and we just get on with it. But it took in total, it took from starting to completion, I think it took just under a year. Yeah, just under a year.
Wow. Okay. So literally every weekend you would be working on this, right?
Yeah, most weeks, not every weekend, most weekends, because I'm a kid. One of my kids is play basketball, so I had that whole So I had the whole basketball because I am the fitness and conditioning coach for the basketball club.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so so not every weekend, some weekends. But like I say, the thing with time management is once you focus on something, and you focus that time on it, you get a lot done. You get a lot done, and if you're running around doing a bit here, a bit there, a bit over here, if you focus time on things, you get a lot done. And yeah, so it's only the only time we really had a crunch was coming to the end when we were before when it was coming time to publish. And we wanted to make some changes still because we realized that the time it took to write the book, things get outdated, so we have to go back and update them.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, so that was the little crunch time, so we was crunch. But then again, like everything else, I put in some time. So between 10:30 and 2 a.m. UK time, I was up doing my bit, but that was like evening time in Chicago.
Wow.
Yeah, well, yeah, and so this is that what it is. So it's all about time management. at the end, to be honest.
And can I ask what you did in the military actually in Trinidad and Tobago? Like,
Ex-special forces.
okay, wow.
Yeah.
So you've really had a long, really diverse experiences, right? And how do you think that background has served you in your current role?
I think, I mean, like I could even, I could go a little slightly back to for me doing military. I'm a mechanical engineer by trade. So I always have this kind of discipline, how things work. Picture a car engine or a ship engine or a steel plant, them things, them those steel plant or methanol plant, big core have to go. And so it's all about, if you take it apart, you have to be able to put it back. So you have to remember where every single little bit go. And so I always have, my brain has always been working this compartmentalized thing. You take out the big bolts and them, stick them here, the little ones go over here, and the smaller ones go over here. So when it's time to get them back, you know where to get it. So it was always that, and then I took that with me into the military, and then of course, them
Hmm.
enhance what I already had in me. So now, on the outside here now, it's just all about discipline. I think that is what it is. It's about
Hmm.
discipline. How you discipline yourself to do things. And I think that is one of the things today. Like I did a tech talk with Joe on Monday. And it was all to do with continuous learning. And that's something that if you don't do, you'll get lost by the wayside, even for us. Even for us, I did the whole, AI course with Oxford. And then I always continue to learn things. So even if I don't need to use it, it's new, it come out, I will take a look at it. I will do a little
Hmm.
POC to just to say, like we just say, just even just to get it to say hello world, and I say,
Yeah.
right, cool. So at least I know about it. So I
Yes.
can, yeah, and I can engage, and I know, well, what we have now is enough. We don't need this. It's good, but we don't need it. And we can wait for the next best thing to come out again before we think. So yeah.
Continuous learning, discipline, and just being aware and acknowledging the new technology, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have to do that, right? As engineers with new technology moving. But I think something I'm worried about is are we people losing discipline, right? So I maybe I'm a father of a 5-year-old son, and I'm looking at my son thinking, you know, with all these tablets, with all this technology, is it too easy to achieve things these days with AI and with tablets? And when I wanted to first learn programming, right, I had to go to the library and pick up a book, right? Or that was kind of how information was shared, and
Yeah.
there was still the internet, and you could still use the internet, but there's a lot more reliance on books. And these days, you can get code generated from LLM models, right, in at your fingertips. And I am concerned with how that impacts people's learning and just kind of the basic skills of discipline, even, right? Where everything's become so amenable and accessible that the bar to getting information becomes so easy that it takes less energy to do something. And we don't value that, I think, as a society, as we're moving into like easy access of everything. You can stay at home, you can get food delivered, you could watch any content you want.
Yeah.
Everything's delivered to your door, right? Which means the energy you put into learning or to do anything becomes less. And we just expect that with everything that we do, which means when there's challenges or when there's difficulties, do we have the correct discipline to get through that?
Yeah, I think that I look at it just exactly like you. And me and my boss was having this conversation just last week as well, because you find everything is so there.
Hmm.
Now, just now, you even have to actually make the call to the supermarket. Just now, the fridge will do it for you. I mean, they could do it now, but it will be on a bigger scale. You see, they'll say, yeah, you need, and by you hear your doorbell ring, and somebody delivering groceries for you because you want, because the fridge do it. Now, but I think in reality, what it is I think that the generation now, they yes, they have it easy, and yes, they will be the people for the future, but I think that they need to pay more attention to some what we call hardcore learning. And that is
Mhm.
pick up a book and read something. Even if you listen to an audio, which I ain't really too like, but even if you
Yeah,
listen to the book on audio, still do that because if you rely and I think that brings us, that takes us back to what we were saying earlier. If you're too reliant on what is there, then how do you cope when something go wrong?
right.
How do you cope? Because you have no coping mechanism, none whatsoever, because it's just like, so it come like actually when COVID hit. When COVID hit, it put people into a realization that, wait a minute, what am I going to do now?
Hmm.
Because they wasn't prepared to that. If this happened, what would I do? Nobody was thinking like that. Yeah, and that's exactly where we head in with this whole the way things are now. Like you say, he's 5 and he could use it, and he could use the tablet better than me and you could. And he's only
Yeah.
5. Yeah, he doing things that we trying to figure out. Wait a minute, I didn't even know you could have done that. you know, and that's it. They're born into this. So this to them is what a library was to us.
Yeah.
Now, so the way to circumvent that is in our thing when dealing with our kids is putting a lot of educational stuff on the tablets on them for them. So they're not only just playing a game, they also have the educational bits of it. It can be in the form of a game as well, but at least it's educational. So that will keep the learning process going because you have to adapt. So now instead of you going to the library just came to you. So you have the whole library sitting on your tablet, and it's about utilizing it and about how and I'm using the word if, how and if you actually use it. And that will eliminate the whole, like we say, we go to the library, we get a book and we read stuff, and then we go home and we practice. And I was telling, and I have some mentees at the moment, and I tell them that it's all about practice. If you could read anything or you can listen to anything, but if you don't actually practice it, it doesn't worth anything to you. Like a
Yeah.
lot of people, like they could do exams. So you see they have a MCSE in this and a CDSP in this and an AWS in that and all this stuff. And then you put them in a room and you say, it's broken, fix it. And they don't even know what to do. Because just reading and taking in everything and be able to regurgitate it to pass an exam is so completely different to actually doing this. And that is where the two have to match up. You have to do the theoretical, and you have to, and I'm so stressing on this much, you have to do the practical. Else at the end of the day, you lost. At the end of the day, you'll be lost.
Yeah. No, it's a very good point. It's almost like you can't read a book on programming without programming, right? You at some point you still need to apply what you've learned, right? And
Yeah.
um, there's a lot of books on programming which maybe describe things in plain English, but then you still need to like run the code and add, do the exercises to actually get the learning. Otherwise, it's almost a pointless activity, right?
Yeah, it's pointless. And that's why, again, if you jump back to the book, we set out the book and we actually making you write some code and we actually making you build this thing from scratch. So by the time you finish reading the book and you actually follow it, you could literally walk away and say, oh, I could do this. And that was the whole concept behind it. So it allows you not just to read a book like any other book, but we wanted to make it that when you read the book and you finish reading the book, you actually walk away, not with just some knowledge, but with some practical knowledge as well. So we give you the
Yes.
code. We give you the code. Go on and check the code out and run it. And we give you the tools to do it. So you're not just reading and taking in, you're actually getting to do the practical thing. And as we know, when coming to coding, when coming to whether it's coding as a developer, coding as a test automator, or anything at all, it's all about repetition. The more you do it, the easier it becomes.
Absolutely. Yeah, you almost feel like you've got a superpower when you finish that book, right?
Yeah,
You've
yeah, exactly. I think that would be, yeah, I think that's the idea. That's the idea. Unlocking the
Great.
superpowers of hybrid testing frameworks is about making you a little superhero.
It's good. I like the analogies in the book. They're really positive and really helpful for going through it. Um, Yeah. So, Larry, thank you for joining my podcast. I really appreciate it. And is there anything you want to sort of leave, any sort of statement before we sort of wrap up?
Yeah, I would say I'll say thanks here in having me on your podcast. And one of the things I like to say is about what the youth of today, and I'm going on the youth of today as opposed to the people behind. What the youth of today to do is really pay attention, one, to all the technology that is coming out, and because it will be part of their life, period. Then I'm not going
Mhm.
back. Pandora's box is open already. So it will always be there. One, pay attention to it, but pay attention to it as opposed to paying attention to the hype about it.
Right. That's
Eh?
quite yeah, that's a very good point. How do you tell the difference between what is hype and what is actually a genuine new technology?
Yeah, well, I just do it like this. This is for me. For me, is I look at where the hype coming from and how the hype come into being. And I'll use an analogy. When Apple or Microsoft or somebody want to release something big, you just hear about it long before you see it,
Yeah.
right? When something out there and it's just about a hype, you just see it before you even hear about it. And that is what you have to, and that is one of the things you have to look out for. So outside of that, and like I say to you, my next thing to them is my little quote that I came up with when I was writing the book. Adapt and thrive. For change is life's true constant. That is what then they need to pay attention to. They need to be able to adapt and thrive. And if you know and I know, we still have some of the older heads who living in what I call the 1912 bubble. They still live inside the 1912 bubble and then realize, wait a minute, the whole world have
It's
progressed
changed.
so far. So yeah, so that's why I like to leave with people to understand what's going on around you. Pay attention to it. Don't believe in the hype, as the song say back in the day. Don't believe in the hype and pay attention to what is real and what's not. And it's easy to tell, like I say, the real
Hmm.
stuff, you just hear about the real stuff before you see it. The hype stuff, you just see it and then you're asking yourself, oh, what is that? And then 2 days after, you're hearing some big hype about something that was released yesterday. And that is the difference between what is on hype and what is actually real, pay attention to. And so yeah, so again, thanks for having me on your podcast, and it was a pleasure doing this.
Great. No, thank you, Larry. I'm definitely taking away your learning of technology, even if you're not using it, just going out there to learn it and see how you can apply it. I think that's amazing. That's really good advice. And yeah, and well done on the book. I think it's a great book. I'll just give the book another show. It's Enhanced Test Automation with WebdriverIO, with your co-author Paul there as well. So
Uh,
really, really great book. I recommend folks grab a copy, especially if you're into like test automation and WebdriverIO. It's a great book.
Yeah, and like I said before you run off, like I said, the book in itself is not just about WebdriverIO. It's about test automation across the board. So you can use what you have, what you learn in the book, and apply it to any other language you have. So that's why we write it like that, because things like CI/CD and
Yes,
and all them kind of things, you have to use all them things as you go, no matter what language you're in. But at least what you would do is, if you follow what's in the book, at least you'll learn something straight across. And again, if you follow what's in the book and you apply it to something else, you will still learn something. So
definitely. Yep.
thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.